So what do you guys all think of this next section of the book?
One of the things that I think she uses so many, maybe metaphors is the right word, or comparisons. Sometimes I kind of think maybe a few too many, but one of the things that this section brought a lot of comfort is that, like, I've taught high school and obviously I teach kids now, and a lot of the skills that she was talking about and using to teach parents, I felt like comforted that I was like, I do know how to teach things. And like, I get in my own head that adults are different and teaching adults is so much different, but in reality, like, I have the skills that I need, and I've been working on those skills for a long time. And so I had like a lot of comfort of being like, you know what, I do know how to give guidance to people. Also, I couldn't figure out what the 4 essentials are.
I definitely went back like after I read hers and was like, did I miss them? I think the 4 essentials were how to build connections with their children. It's on, I don't know what page. I have a kid, I'm using a Kindle and I haven't quite navigated it, but it's how to build connections with their children, how to position themselves to influence their children's faith. Oh, page 54. How to proactively, it's right up there. I know I had to go back. I was like, how come she didn't talk about them? I feel like she mentions them and then just alludes to them throughout the rest of the, at least that's how I felt. Did anybody else maybe pick on those immediately?
I had the same trouble. I went through and I was like, what are the essentials? I just read it. And so that's how I knew it was page 54, because I also had to go back and double check.
Yeah, I found that she like referenced that she's like, there's more of them in these books. And I was like, well, this isn't helpful. Why? It makes sense. Anybody else?
You just referenced her other books. As I was reading, it made me really interested in the other books that she referenced. And so there was one in particular that it sounded like gave very specific, like, I feel like the reading was really good this week, and it was concepts, where it sounded like the book she was referring to was very specific. Did any of you get that impression, or have any of you read her other material?
I was definitely under that impression too, because they're called like parenting for the faith, parenting for confidence, parent. So I assume it's written similarly. She's the author, like she's part of that connection to the Messy Church and stuff. I don't know if you guys checked out the websites or her website that she mentions all the time. They're connected to Messy Church. So
if you, what church?
Messy Church. It's a hands-on, messy exploration of the Bible a little bit more, and looking at recreating generational community through interactive biblical stuff. So if you've ever worked with Messy Church, that might give you an idea as to where they're coming from. I don't know. I didn't find a lot of the stuff that she was talking about on there, but I didn't look too far. But yeah, I was really drawn with the idea of coaching. I don't know, I've never thought of myself as a coach, and she kept kind of coming back to that in coaching parents. And so that definitely was something. I don't know where I sat with that as I read. I was like, I like this idea, I think, but I kind of believe that, you know, our like kids ministry, and I call it a feeder ministry, is my idea behind it, is we kind of feed off every other ministry. So when men and women and grandparents are all doing kind of what they're designed to do and building into those roles, then naturally our kids ministry benefits, because grandparents, you know, the seniors ministry realizes, oh, we're supposed to be feeding into our grandparents, you know, be grandparents to the kids, and mom and dad are getting their needs met at a man and woman level, and then we care for their marriages, and then we just naturally benefit. But so that was kind of interesting to think of. Like, I don't know, sometimes I struggle with that, coaching parents through stuff.
I liked how on page 66 she's kind of talking about like the pastoral heart, and I like that she's talking about like listening to them. Like in the second last paragraph, she says we walk into the deeply personal and vulnerable parts of their lives. And I think, like, of course, we have to be careful as ministers that we aren't counselors or social workers or anything like that, but we can provide a sense of community. And I love that she just talked about, you know, just listen to them. If they bring something up, listen and let them know that they're heard, and connect them to other resources. So I really like that aspect of like the coaching. I have like a ministry coach mentor lady, and that's really what she does. She just asks me questions and listens to me. And if there's ever a time where she's like, yeah, you need to go get help, she'll refer me to somebody else. So I like that it wasn't like, because I feel like if I felt like I was the sole coach, I would feel like I'm not equipped for that. That's not, God has called me to minister to kids' hearts, not necessarily adults, but I can listen and encourage them and provide the place for that to happen.
I liked the point that she talked about, like in a good coach team, then you'll see other players help one another with a skill or request help from one another. And I feel like I have a big heart for creating the communities within parents that they feel comfortable. Like, I know that this parent has kids slightly older than mine, and they've done this. So I liked kind of that building along with coaching, kind of building a team and not just one-on-one coaching, so that they have other parents to build with.
So Hannah, do you do that already kind of within your ministry? And like, what does that look like? Because I've been wrestling with that. Like, we have a lot of, in our church, we have a lot of generational families, I think is the way to word it. Like, so grandma and grandpa come, or great grandma and grandpa are also in the church. So they've kind of been building and doing all these things. But I find that our church is often very like family oriented that way. And we don't necessarily have those networks. Or when new families come in, how do you plug them into your already existing communities if you do that?
Yeah, right now we're working on building like community groups. So it's just once a month, but like single parents have one night where they all come together and kind of do, like, at someone's house, do dinner together and like a Bible study discussion type time. And then we just started doing now like young couples, and then we were wanting to do one with older couples, but making sure that we have someone who has parented before that can kind of be the conversation guide, like leader. And then our struggle is that we don't have generational families. We have lots of a variety of kinds of families, but pretty much I have to offer like childcare at every single thing. But that's sometimes hard to get volunteers to be able to offer childcare for so many different events.
So moving into question number 1, do you feel that you already engage in one or more of the 4 essential areas? And if so, has it been successful, or what have you tried, or how has it maybe failed, so we can also learn what maybe didn't work?
I feel like I'm not good at any of these 4 essentials. All of these 4, well, pretty much the whole book is all these big picture things that take lots of small tasks that create something really great at the end. And that's one of the ways in general that I struggle. Like, I like the things that you do, and this week you see the fruit from it. And like, all of these are little tiny pieces that develop better fruit, but not until years down the road. And I just struggle with trying to get, like, I feel like I get overtaken by like the day-to-day stuff that needs to get done.
So when you say that you do like little tiny things, would you say that you do anything that would relate to any of them? Or maybe like, and she kind of mentioned it, I know that we're talking about the 4 essential areas as deemed by the book, but the book also talks about how maybe we don't feel that way. Like, maybe your church situation doesn't necessarily need all 4. Maybe you have 4 different ones. Is it possible that maybe you have 4 different essentials that you believe in, or maybe one different one? I think maybe we subconsciously think about some of these things, like, why do you have the family community groups that you're doing? What is the purpose? And although you're seeing the fruit immediately, they obviously have a role in the grand picture. And what would be your heart behind that?
I don't know.
I really honestly struggle. Like, I feel like I value a lot of those. And then I think about what I do in my ministry, and what hasn't worked has been everything that's related to those. So it kind of feels like, in theory, they're all really great things. But like right now, our church is very focused on discipleship, we've hired someone over the past, I think he's on year 2 or 3 now, to come in and like look at discipleship and start to creating kind of this discipleship pathway ultimately as to how we can disciple. And so we've tried things like take it home events. And I did so we usually, I know the idea behind take it home is to do it grade specific, but because they'd never been done in the church, I opened it up to anyone who felt like showing up. And I did one on like pornography and how to choose a Bible. And we did a parenting Sunday school with learning how to pray for your child, or the Stormy book, The Power of a Praying Parent. And while they were all rightly received, it was interesting just to see like for the pornography one, I actually got a lot more of my high school, junior highs, which I don't really normally interact with, but and then for choosing the Bible, a lot less. And I feel like sometimes, I don't know if parents are just too busy. So I don't know, has anyone ever done like a podcast or a YouTube channel to try to like connect some of these? I don't even know if I could answer like how to position themselves to influence their children for faith. I don't know if I know what that would look like. Kind of from my standpoint, I know I really push like the small conversations. If you can take a daily conversation and just have a conversation with your kid about, why the grass is green today and bring it back to God, you're doing great, kind of is how we've been rolling, but I can't say it's been successful. Jackie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, one thing that we started doing at our church that has gone really well is that we made a shift after COVID or during COVID, and we only do one Bible story, one memory verse, one main idea for the month, and we explored like the Bible story from 3 different angles and one per week. And we've really, we've given the parents one question, like what is what is one of your favorite worship experiences, and just share it with your kids. And then for our family discipleship, we started like a stair step approach. And so, because like she says, the first one is, building connections with your kids. And so we got a game called, I can't think of it now, Beat That. And it has really simple materials: chopsticks, dice, ping pong balls, Dixie cups. And so we just give out a couple of those and just say, just do a family night, one night a week or whatever. And then we have family challenges. So that way, like everybody posts their score on our Facebook page, and like, this is how you play it. And we have like a different kids family do the videos every week on how to play the game. And then we have just a simple declaration prayer to pray over your kids. So, we are a family that lives a lifestyle of worship. We're just going to pray that over our families all month long and just see what God does. And then the next step from, building that relationship, because it all is out of relationship. The next step is then talking about your go zones and your target list and the people that God has placed in your life. And just encouraging parents to sit down and say, these are the adults that we have in our life, and this is why we love them, and we love the relationship that you have with these grownups. And we got that from Sticky Faith, because the Sticky Faith talks about having outside influences outside the home to speak into your children's life to give them the better chance of being lifelong followers of Jesus. So, just really giving parents the opportunity to tell their kids, we see these people loving on you in church who champion you, whether it's a Christian basketball coach or a Christian teacher or whatever, and just pointing out those positive things that other adults in the community are pouring into their kids, and just affirming them and praying for them. And then releasing the family to then say, where are places that we go on a regular basis as a family, whether that's the grocery store or the fast food restaurant or whatever, and who are people that we see, and how can we use our stories and our experiences to impact others for Jesus and to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our community, and how can we reflect God's love like a mirror. And then the final step, and that's again just once a month, we have one focus. So it's, we're going to talk about our go zones this month. We're going to talk about our target list this month. We're going to talk about, and And we do like either car time and focus on car time for the month. Here's a game to play in the car with your kids. Here's how we can talk about, what God is doing or God's creation in the car on the way to school, on the drive home from school, and it's just car time or meal time or bedtime instead of trying to do all 4 focuses. But there's home time, go time, meal time, and bedtime. So I noticed a lot of curriculum resources try to make parents focus on all those things. So just really trying to simplify it. And then I gave everybody the opportunity to just to share on Facebook, what's working well for you, and how can we invite God into everyday situations. So we have like a Hey Alexa thing. And so Hey Alexa, play Barlow Girl or play Relient K, and just kind of give other music alternatives, questions to ask, testimonies to share, just all one focus. And then when they're ready for the final step, then they get all of it in one little booklet for the quarter. And so it has our 3 main focuses and then inviting God into everyday moments. And it's gone well. It's something, it's always like a work in progress, because you have parents that a lot of our parents don't even come to church. They send their kids with grandparents. And so we've actually seen some engagement, and we've seen some feedback, and we've seen grandparents who are now able to just play simple games with their kids or talk to their own kids about what's going on in kids' church and church as a whole. And then we also give everybody a prayer card. Like, here's just a way to pray for all the kids in the community or church or your grandkids or whatever. And so that's been our really big focus on helping parents disciple. Just break it down, make it simple, one thing, and meet them on the stuff that they're on. Because if they don't have a good relationship with their kids, they're not going to be able to speak about Jesus, because they're not going to have that right to do so. And so just giving them those foundational things. And yeah, that's
Jackie, could you type in the chat box what those 4 steps were, and then what were it was mealtime, go time, bedtime, and
home time. So hangout time. So go time is time in the car. The meal time is dinner time. Bedtime is bedtime routines. And then hangout time is just inviting God into the everyday moments. And we do that on Facebook, like, oh, hey, Alexa, play this, and then sharing their testimony and just giving the kids. I mean, there are times when we'll do like our family devotion, and I'll tell my kids, okay, we're just going to take a minute and we're just going to pause and see what God speaks to us. And if you don't hear anything, that's okay. And giving parents permission to say, I don't know. And, you were going to try this and it might work and it might not work, but God is personal and he's going to speak to all of us differently. So in giving them some of that verbiage. But you wanted the 4
well, yeah. So were you talking about 2 different? So there's like the 4 times, and then were you saying that there were steps?
Yeah. So the first step is we give them like a calendar printout, and I can post them in the group. So we give them like a calendar printout with like our memory verse for the month, our Bible story for the month, our main idea for the month, and it's games to play, conversations to have. What else is there? Things to pray. And different ways to practice the memory verse and to read the Bible story. And it's just like a checklist, and they can either, post pictures on Facebook, and we have like different prompts that we post on Facebook. So like, here's our, we're going to act out the Bible story, or we're going to use toys or whatever, and they take pictures and they can share their own experiences. And then the next step is a monthly printout that we send home. With their go zones and their target lists, and getting a little bit more intentional about the spiritual side of things with the fun side. And then the third step is the little booklet. So I will post those in the group chat.
Just a question about that, and like your monthly theme, does that link to what you're doing on Sunday morning, or is that kind of like a home focus versus a church focus?
Nope, it is all tied in with our curriculum. Okay. So which be right. So I can't. We're in the process right now trying to get it out on a wider scale, but that's taking a while. So we have a lot of churches in the community and our surrounding areas that use it. And And then my pastor went and told our state overseer about it. And so now I have to go promote all of that to our state overseers. And he's like, you need to put a website together. So I'm in the process of getting all of that together. But it's I'll post an outline. How does that? I'll post an outline of like, this is what our typical month looks like, and here's the family resources that we send home. And would that be helpful? Okay, I
So-
can do that.
Are you saying that you see some of the parents that don't attend church taking part in this as well?
Yes, because it's games. Like the first step is just relational based. And so here's games that you can play at home as a family. And we have family challenges. So once a year we have kid midnight. And so the kids come in and they do it's like their own church service. We talk about what God has done in the past year. We use all of our, we use a lot of visuals throughout the year. So we have like a prayer chain with black is like our sacrifice of praise. And we have different colors for our prayer requests, and then glittered paper for every prayer that has been answered. So we go over like all of the visual reminders that we have of what God has done throughout the year. The kids do journals instead of take-home sheets. And so they get to take home their journals, and we talk about the journals, we cast vision, and so they can earn points as a family for like, we have like a roller rink in town. So we get discount, or we'll pay for the family to go to the roller rink, or for a pizza night, or for a movie night, and they get to redeem all of their family points at this big event that we do. So they'll redeem those points, and then the parents then, because the kids are like, oh, well, we can do this, and we can go roller skating or, whatever for free. And so that's a little bit of an incentive for our parents that aren't going to church, and they don't necessarily get to the point of doing like the go zones and all of that, but they do the silly conversation starters. They do the mealtime conversations. They do talk about, if people in their life that they love and that they appreciate who are pouring into their kids. They do play the games. And they at least see I don't necessarily know if they play the playlists and stuff that we post on, as far as, hey, Alexa, play Yancey, and then they don't really give us feedback as far as like, yeah, we absolutely love this song or this band or whatever, but it's at least there for them when, our job is to plant the seeds. God is in charge of the harvest. So it's at least there when they are ready.
That's really awesome. Like, that sounds so wonderful. Like, I'm thinking, how can I incorporate parts of that? I don't think it'll work fully, but I love the ideas there. Anybody else doing anything or have tried things and you're like, it was a complete flop? Let's celebrate both, I guess.
I think for me, as I was processing these essential areas, it's been really interesting processing this in light of the pandemic. I would say just before the pandemic, we were really starting to think through how can we be helping provide tools for discipleship in the home. So I think of those 4 essential areas that helping parents proactively disciple their children was something we were starting to dip into. And then the pandemic happened, and it was like, that's all we had. Like, all we had was, what the parents would give. And so, or what we would provide for parents to do in the home. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we found an interesting dynamic in that the time that we were 100% remote or online, parents were so overwhelmed with distance learning and online schooling. And so our really good, well thought out initial push for resources and things they could do as a home was at a time that parents were like, I am barely treading water. I don't know if you have felt that way, but we felt that way. And so then it's been interesting. So we went through that phase where everyone was locked down. And then we got to the point where when we first reopened, we provided large group lessons and then take home small group, because we could have people sit in family pods, but not in the classrooms. And that, went well to an extent, but what people were really desiring was that community and being able to be back into classes and groups. And so now we're at that point. And so we're back to a little bit more of that normal feel. And so what we've been now working on is kind of rethinking, okay, what worked well when we were providing all these resources, and what was just, it didn't work, and which things was just the timing wasn't right. And so what we've worked on is like at Advent, we provide a very specific take-home family activity. It was like a Advent to go, and so there were little devotion cards. And then I like the Deeper Kid Min website for their resources. And then we had Lent resources. And then for this summer, our preaching series is on the Book of Psalms. And so we're doing a Psalm reading plan for adults, but then we have a kid version where we're adopting, kids can adopt a Bible pal, a little stuffed animal. And so then families are encouraged to then read aloud and have their kids do the full reading plan if they're older and they think that that's developmentally appropriate, or kids can then have their own reading plan if that's going to be the best fit, which is a little bit more simplified. So we've done those types of things. I'm sure you guys have too, just finding which types of resources are really helpful and not overwhelming. And so one of the things I've been processing with this book was, I completely get what she's saying with the IKEA approach. Like, here's 5 different living rooms. Which one fits your family? I think during the pandemic, families were so overwhelmed at all the free resources and all the things that were out there that my approach this last year has been, I filter through all the things and try to give very simple things for families to do. And so I'm processing that with the IKEA approach, if that makes sense. So I think just figuring out what our families need, what's valuable, what's helpful, what's not overwhelming.
You said that you had like family pods lessons. Is that correct?
Well, during the pandemic, so our model is normally large group, small group. And so what we did in our first phase of reopening is we did large group with families sitting together, and then take home kits. So we had like little bags. So basically we took our curriculum that was written for like a small group leader with their small group. We took that and made a family version. So the concept was, they come as a family, they hear large group as a family, they're all 6 feet apart, so everybody's okay. And then they go home and do the small group materials as a family. And I still think it was a great idea. We went from like preparing like 60 kits for 60 families to like 10 were taken a week. And I think, I mean, really, we have families that really have a desire to be, you know, with their kids, and they want their kids in the Word. I think one of the takeaways is, for good or for, it reminded me of the introduction of this book, like families just really want their kids in with peers and in like a Sunday school setting. That's a desire of our people. So what I've been trying to think through is, I've been seeing one of the conversations we're having in our church is, we tend to be a very programmatic church. And so what is the role of a program? And I've kind of come full circle, and I think programs aren't the end results, but they're a vehicle to reach the goal. And so I've been trying to view the desire of our people is to have a place of community, a place where there can be other people mentoring and teaching their kids. But I'm trying to view that as more of the front porch. They think that that's the house. I think it's the front porch, to then, how can I then use that as a stepping stone into helping discipleship then occur in the home? And so our Wednesday night program, we do take home sheets. We call them Digging at Homes. And so the idea is they could then go home and they discuss and do activities from that paper. And then the kids, if they bring it back signed, they get a prize. And then so we have that on a weekly basis, but then we try to have special opportunities that just encourage and give resources for families to use, like the Advent. And then we do Bible presentation. The pandemic changed how we do Bible presentation. It typically is for first graders, and it's like first graders come up and the pastor gives them the Bible. But because of our numbers and needing to be 6 feet apart, our Bible presentation was all done where the first graders came with a mentor or a parent, and they came to a little meeting before the service. And then the presentation was actually all the family units standing up in their spots in the church. and the parents had the Bible, and the parents were actually the ones that presented the Bible to the first grader. And it was great and super meaningful. So then this last year, even though we could have done it the old way, we didn't. We did have the mentors or parents, we have grandparents that serve in that role. They came up and we had like a kind of a repeat after the pastor. And so the parent would say, you are a treasured child of God. This is God's word and it is for you. And so then they spoke that to their child all simultaneously. And then we kind of gave the plug for it. We are giving you a Bible to give to your child, but you are in this spot to be able to be in God's word together. And that was really received well too.
I have this like vision of something. What part of the reason why I was asking about the family pods, I have this vision, but I don't know if it's like the actual practical things of having families come like maybe for a meal and teaching from like the stage and having like a short lesson, and then having the parents, like the families, have discussion questions at their tables to like build the confidence about talking about Jesus. Like she was talking about like all the options, and I just was thinking about how many adults think it's like cheesy, I guess, to talk about Jesus, and so then they like breaking that seal. But thinking through what that can look like as far as like differentiating for all the different ages, thinking through that, what that looks like if we have, because we have a relatively small church, so I wouldn't want to run a bunch of different events, so it'd be any parent that was interested. So that's like babies through, I think our oldest kid is in like 10th grade. So differentiating levels of questions. And then like as a secondary thing, thinking through the practical way to make it clear. A lot of our parents are, I don't know, they tend to default to me being in charge of their children if they're here. It's been like a safety concern more than once. And I've been like, I just have to worry about offending people and be like super clear, like, this is a family event where you will be in charge of your child, because like you can't just assume that if I'm in the space, I know where your 3-year-old is. And that's happened before. Even for events that weren't kids ministry. One time I was at a young adult event and someone brought their kid and they asked me, and they're like, where's Noah? I was like, I'm not even, this is no childcare is provided. Why would I know where your child is? But so just thinking through that, I don't know. I would love, if I don't want to take too much time away from the book, but I don't know. I would love any feedback on something like that, or if anybody's done anything like that.
We're exploring that for the fall. Something similar in the idea of doing a worship service. I don't have the same problem as my parents are very conscious of where their children are. I'm usually the one who's like, I wonder where my kids are, but they're church staff kids, so they kind of know their spaces in the church, and they take all the other kids. But something that we do, and we started doing this during the pandemic, because we canceled kids ministry. Like ours was down for I think a year and a half. We were closed, was we did tables, and we do like pizza boxes. So that was kind of our start. But one way, and not to like put a lot of pressure, but questions have a way of morphing. So even the simplest question can become the more complex. You don't need to make a complex question if you're dealing with, like, if you make them more about their own life experiences, because then your 3-year-olds can say, oh, I love Jesus. And mom's like, great. But your 10-year-olds can, or your, grade 10s can adapt, and they have bigger life experiences, and they can provide, if your questions provide a gateway to deeper conversation, you can't make families talk regardless of how many questions and how awesome they are. But if your questions are kind of open-ended and more about their life, like connecting what you're talking about to their life, where the answer Jesus doesn't exactly, fit properly, as we know, Sunday school answers Jesus, God loves me, the whole works. So that's where I would go with that, questions and making them, because I can ask the same question to all of, like, we have at one point we had kindergartens to grade 5s in one room, and we still do, I guess, and you can ask the same question, but the level of response is where it's going to vary, and it's going to take a while. Like I would say that when you start it, expect it to be very minimal conversation, especially if your parents rely a lot on you. to be the teacher, on you to be the enforcer, on you to be it all. And if that is how it is, you may even want to like step out of the room, like do the lesson or have someone else teach the lesson, and you just kind of disappear and be like, I'm giving you guys 15 minutes to have a conversation. You've got the stuff you need, everything you need is there, and then you can just sit someplace. I mean, obviously you don't want to totally disappear, but just to kind of shift that. But yeah, that's just where like we're doing, I think we're going to do some exploring of different ways that we can teach our kids within a like, so godly play and stuff that you can do at home. But that's where I would go if you're thinking questions and stuff like that. Keep them very applicable to life, and then they can. All right, let's move on to question 2. Great conversation. I mean, I love hearing all these ideas. I'm super pumped. I'm trying to focus more on family discipleship next year. And so it's kind of exciting to see the different ways that they're working in other churches. So how can you coach your community of parents and or individuals over the next few weeks?
This one's actually really tough to answer, because it's like you have like there's so many parents who are in so many different spots. And like our church, we have a lot of homeschool families where the parents bring their kids. Most of them are homeschool families. And so I think one of the things that I think would be best for my ministry, as far as helping to coach parents, is just even having, just kind of narrowing down like on that end goal, like for parents who raise their families in our church, where do we want to see them after a year? How do we want to equip them at that salvation point? How do we want to engage them in spiritual milestones of their child's development, and then work backwards? Does that make sense? And so I think for me, just because we do kind of have like a shift happening right now in the families that are attending, to where they spend 99% of their time with mom. How can we, how do we step into the role of the coach? And I think one of the things that I'm kind of playing around with after reading these chapters is inviting the parent, like instead of like having like an altar call at the end of service, invite the parents to be part of that, and as they pick up their kids, and just here's what your child wants to see God do in the next week. How can like follow up and pray with the parents over that, and let the parents pray into that with their kids. But it, again, it's tough, because when you have the family come and it's like their first Sunday and it's like Salvation Sunday, you're starting at point 1 versus, you have the homeschool parent that has like everything is biblically based in all of their curriculum, and, the science lessons, and then, everything is, God's the center, and everything that we do is an extension of exploring who he is, because you're going to coach that parent completely different than you would coach a parent who just came in off the street. So just trying to make it, what can we do to make it more relational, and what can we do to meet parents on the step that they're on, but then also invite them to be a part of those big milestones and moments.
One thing that I marked from the coaching chapters was the part about coaching individuals, about building on strengths, from page 68. I really liked the way she talked about helping them see the areas that they are in an area of strength, and encouraging them. I like the question, like, okay, so what does your family do well? What is a family strength of yours? I'm not sure if you guys feel this way, but sometimes families assume, because I work for the church, that like I have it together and I know, like with my kids and parenting, whatever. And so I feel like sometimes I think families feel hesitant to let me know. That's not the right word, but I feel like sometimes people seem to think that I have it together and they don't, and that's so not right. And I don't think I'm doing anything to try to whatever, but what I really love about this section on building on their strengths is, like, I'll have a conversation with a parent, and sometimes they'll say, oh, this is, they'll say things like, oh, your kids are so well behaved, or, oh, you do the devotion, or whatever, and I really like turning around, like, well, what does your family do well, and finding ways to be able to help our families see, like, are in this area of strength, and there shouldn't be comparison. And I thought that was really, really good, the way it was worded.
I find where I get embarrassed, like, well, I didn't really get to like the devotion, and they're kind of almost embarrassed to tell you that they didn't do what they had committed to. And I'm always like, well, I totally get it. This week we got through one because my children decided, Bible story time or whatever devotional time was the time to beat each other up. I don't know. I really run from a place where I try to make sure that, like, I don't put the pressure, and it's hard. Obviously I think parents put their own pressure, and I definitely see that a lot more in our church, that like parents kind of have created this pressure on themselves of like, I got to be doing this and it's got to look like, and you're kind of like, no, anything you do is great. When I think about the coaching, and I was just looking at, one of the things that stood out to me was teaching the whys. I think I'm really good at being like, okay, because in my brain I can see the end result, but I can't always tell you how to get there. So I'm like, you should be doing this, but I can't tell you why or how or whatever. And so I think I need to backtrack a little bit on some of the things that we do in terms of just even not articulating properly. I'm looking at launching a leadership track for our grade 4, 5, 6s. And I've had like people on my leadership team being like, so what exactly is this? I was like, oh, I thought I've explained it like 5 times over the past 2 years because COVID kind of stopped everything. Apparently not very well. So for me, I think I need to focus on giving kind of a bit more of like, why do we need to do this? Why is this important? Why is engaging with our kids about prayer, a thing that we need to do, or why should we try doing it this way? Noting also that there isn't just a right way to engage our families.
Piggybacking off of that, I also really like that, teaching the whys, not just the whats. I think a challenge that I have, and I'm curious if you guys are seeing this as well, is the whats are quicker and efficient to communicate. The whys take more time, like sit down with the parents, do an event, do a parent night. And the busyness of families, I feel like the pandemic really slowed things down, and people talked about treasuring that family time. And then now that everything's opened up, it's like the desire is there. And I think there's really valuable things we can do in explaining the whys and casting vision, but it's so crunched and families are so busy. Are you finding that? And are you finding good solutions to that?
Frank Beeler, I think that's his name, and his wife, I forget his wife's name. But they used to do Elevation Church, but her whole thing, it was so that statements. And so she would use the example of telling a volunteer that they needed to vacuum the floor because it was messy. And so she said, when you tell somebody, I need you to vacuum the floor because it's messy, it's it explains a little bit of the why, but it's more of like you telling them what to do. And so she said, so we switched how we do things to so that statement. So we need to make sure that the floor is vacuumed before parents arrive, so that the room is always ready to welcome families, and it lets them know that we are ready for their kids, and that we just love we love them, we love their family, and that this is a safe place for their kids to be. And so they broke down their ministry to like 3 or 4 core values. And they constantly were emphasizing the why behind those 3 or 4 core values. And then everything that they did was they went back to the so that, and then whatever that core value was, because they're constantly communicating the the why behind those 4 core values. So then when you say so that, if this is a safe environment, they know, okay, that this is already communicated, and I know what a safe environment means and why it's important. And so that might be something to try, is like, what are my 3 or 4 core values that I'm going to overemphasize and over communicate all the time? So then I can go ahead and tell anyone in the church a so that statement and refer back to one of those 3 or 4 values, and everybody knows exactly what I mean, because it's a part of our culture, and it's just part of who we are and what we do and why we do it.
Something else I've done, and I started doing this during the pandemic because I'm a bit of a collector in resources. I love resourcing like families and having stuff available, but I started picking up like different topics, and then finding people within the church, like within my family groupings, and giving them and being like, can you review this for me? So right now I have like one of my grade 5 boys is reading The Power of a Praying Kid, and kind of finding ways so they fit with what we're trying to work on. We're fit on a focus, but it's kind of giving purpose, because sometimes when you say, here, do this, parents are like, oh yeah, okay, and then it sits. But when you're kind of like, hey, I need this looked at and reviewed, can you do that as a family? I'll say I don't have time, my kids aren't the right age, your kids fit better. Like I have all these different reasons that I'm doing it. Like it's not just weird. um but I find that they are quite willing, and then it's also getting resources into the home that they will try out, because there is a kind of a bit more of a purpose sometimes. Like I love the idea of the point system and stuff that Jackie, I think you were doing it. Our families, they're not so driven by points and stuff. Like we've tried different things, they haven't quite caught on yet to that. That's not their motivation, but I do find that they're open to, oh yeah, I can review a book on family worship. We can do this devotional as a family. As grandparents will grab books and be like, yeah, I can read this, and look through it in a way of also getting kind of where we're going into the hands of people without having to listen to me tell you over and over and over again what I want and why. All right, so we've got about 8 minutes before that hour period kind of hits. So let's look at number 3. Which help desk suggestion resonated with you the most, and how can you be better at it?
I once again was comforted. I don't have kids and I'm not married. And so it was comforting to like talking about how you don't expect the help desk person to have ridden on a million trains. You just expect them to have knowledge and to be willing and is there for you to ask questions and is a friendly person. So that was comforting to me, of just like, I need to be here and have resources and be ready to offer help, and don't have to be like this amazing parent myself to be a trusted resource.
I appreciated on page 77, the be available one. I think that was a good reminder, especially reopening after the pandemic. There was a lot of retraining of volunteers. I had new staff. And so it's really hard to be available, because I feel like during those peak volume times, I'm needed in like 8 places. And so I've tried to get better at it. And this was a good affirmation that, you know what, even if there are things that are not done, my spot is to be available and be where parents can find me. Unless there really is like a situation that has to be me that takes care of it. And I thought that was just such a good reminder, because the time we have face-to-face with families is so precious, and it's usually in those transitions. And so I thought that was really good, to be visible and available, and not, I guess it's an encouragement for me to plan those high volume times better.
Yeah, that definitely resonated with me too. I find that on Sunday mornings particularly, my brain like switches into like task mode. Like, how many things do I have to get done? Who needs to be where? I need to make sure my teachers are there. And just kind of that reminder that I need to stop. I love talking to people, but I find that on Sunday mornings, the conversation, if it's not like an immediate need or something, I often don't even think to stop and be like, oh, did this happen? Like, I know so much about my kids, but I don't always ask them on Sunday morning, because it's almost like I don't think about it. And so just that reminder to slow down and to connect with those parents. I find our Sunday school hour, I can do it, but it's that in between church and Sunday school when everybody's transitioning from different programs and you've got new families. And I really appreciated that as being like, hey, this is valuable. And I know it's valuable, but you kind of forget.
I think it also released from the guilt. Like, I'm very much a Martha personality. And so like, it's really hard for me to know that there's all these volunteers doing the things. And for me just to be standing and not doing something, I feel guilty. Like, I know I should. And then I feel guilty when I do. And that was a good reminder that sometimes my job is to just be where people know where I am. And that was really helpful.
So question on the help desk idea. Do you guys do a lot of like family counseling, like not counseling, but like troubleshooting, maybe is what we'll call it? Where families come and they sit and they ask, like, I don't know, there was one line, I think it was in the book, or maybe somebody said it, where kind of the feeling like families maybe don't see us or see me anyway as that person. I do have a couple that I've gotten to know and they're like, oh, I need this or I want this, but I find that a majority of our families kind of just hold on to that stuff. And I just wondered if you guys do a lot of that, and did you create that atmosphere, or was it kind of just expected, or maybe you don't, I don't know.
The families that attend my church, it's very different than what I'm used to. But I feel like the help desk stuff I provide, um, like I struggle to get over the initial help. Like a lot of our families don't have cars, and so like they'll reach out to me for help, but it's about like physical needs, like we don't have food this week, or I can't get my kid to where they need to go this week. And like um it feels really, really like an overwhelming task to bring them to a place where, because even just I was looking at the list of the 4 places that Jackie was talking about, and I was like, oh, this is such great. I'm going to implement this. And then I was like, a lot of our families don't have enough structure that they even, I don't think they sit down for meals. I don't think they have bedtime. I know that some of their kids stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning because they didn't naturally fall asleep like they think they should. And they don't have bedtime stuff. I know that they don't spend a whole lot of time in specific play hangout time, and they don't have go time because they don't have cars where they have that individual time. So just thinking through, like, before I can implement any of that, I'm going to need to start encouraging my parents to have structure. Like, this is saying like, here's a mealtime discussion piece. It feels really far away when I'm like, they don't have mealtime at all. And so like sometimes I feel like I am the help desk. It's just not the help that I want to be giving, and how to still find ways to encourage people to parent for faith within what parenting confines they have and what other struggles they have.
I am not really a help desk. Like I went to school to be a teacher. So in a lot of ways, I have the homeschool moms like asking me for help for, homeschool resources or anything like that. But as far as anything like spiritual development, they go more to my pastor and his wife for that. In the way that they have the church set up, they're more of like the go-to people for that kind of thing. So it creates an interesting dynamic, just because if there is a need for resources or something, my pastors and his wife come to me, and then I give them the resources and they give it to the family. So it's a weird triangle, but it also makes my life a little bit easier because we live 4 or 5 towns away from our church. So, I mean, it's only like a 40-minute drive, but I'm a bit removed from our community. But one thing, too, I don't know your name. You were just talking before me. What would you be able to like take dinner to a family and have dinner with them and kind of cultivate like a little bit of like a fun conversation or something like that, just to be able to give them a little bit of an introduction to what that structure looks like?
That's one of the things that I've wanted to do. I just started. I haven't been full-time for even a year. I'll be full-time at the beginning, like for a year at the beginning of June. And so when I first started, I didn't have enough to fill my time. And so I started filling my time. And then all of a sudden I got to the end of this semester and was like, I have somehow planned things for Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night for myself. And then I can't give up my one night a week to go do that. So that's one of the things that I'd like to do. And it's part of the vision to just kind of knock out more families at once with the thing I was talking about earlier, is like having them come to church all at the same time to kind of start it off that way. I'd read a different book that was suggesting that said they did like, instead of Wednesday night church, they had like once a month or once a quarter or something. Like everybody comes to church and then they send home resources that were like, this is how you can do this like at your own house. Like here's how you could lead that discipleship stuff. But that's one of the things I'd like to do, is to be in homes more often. And just, but being prepared to go into a home and not trying to insult anybody by I don't know. I just feel like I question too many things.
Yeah. One thing that we did a year ago or so, well, maybe a year ago, we did a family game night. And so all the families came to church and we had pizza for dinner. And then there were different discussion questions on the table. So like, if you had $1,000, what would you do with it? If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? And so we just kind of had all of these different discussion questions. And then everybody voted on their, or like just chose somebody at random. They rolled a dice, counted out people, and that person got to share that their table's question and their answer. And so, and I could just kind of introduce that as like here's how you can just have a fun conversation at home and use the, the question prompt that we sent home as a way to do that. And then we went into the fellowship, or the sanctuary, sorry. We went to the sanctuary and had just a bunch of games set up, and we had different people from different generations and different families bring a different family game. And then we just played games all night, and it was a really good, it was a good start to being able to have those conversations. And then the kids had something tangible to talk to the parents and say, that game was a lot of fun. And then that's when I introduced the Beat That, and then I gave them the little cards, and we just kind of passed around the cards and do that, because that's 250 games, and there's I think there's like 20 parents or 20 families in our church, so we just kind of cycle them around. And I just gave everybody their own game kit because it was really cheap to put them together.
Do you get those back?
I do. We rotate them around. So you check them out and then you bring them back, or I go pick them up, or my pastor's wife goes to pick them up, or but you could even just come up with your own challenges and type them up on a piece of paper and send those home.
All right. And the final question, I don't know if anyone has any questions for the author about these chapters. And if you did, what are they?
I would be interested to hear some of their flops, because a lot of times we hear in the books, like, here's how I came to the final conclusion of what all this looks like. But how did she come to some of these conclusions? And how did she learn to set herself up as a help desk without feeling like, to where she wasn't like overstepping her boundaries? And, how just some of the behind the scene processes, because I feel like a lot of times when I hear people's flops, then it helps me kind of navigate like, oh, okay, and give me different things to look for as far as like yellow flags, red flags before it completely flops.
My question is from page 65. To clarify, she talked about, it says the coach is the teacher and the facilitator. So if she could clarify, what she was saying is we don't want to allow active individuals to position themselves as occasional coaches, which can make people feel unsafe. And I agree, we don't want our people giving unsolicited advice. However, how does that tie into mentoring? Because I've been encouraged by my pastor and leadership staff is how can I be training and disciple? We want disciples who make disciples. So I've been encouraged to empower our people to then go and mentor and disciple others. So how does this caution against having people positioning themselves as occasional coaches, how does that compare with wanting to build up disciples who disciple and a mentoring, which is a healthy thing in a congregation?
All right. If we have no other questions, I'm just going to close in prayer. I thank you, ladies, for all of your contributions. There's some really awesome ideas that have definitely been floating around. I think this book brings to light a lot, and it's also really great to be able to connect with people from different parts and to see what they're doing and what works and how we can maybe adapt it to our own situation. So let's pray. God, I just thank you so much for this opportunity we have to come together and to just read and learn how we can better help the families in our ministry do what you've designed them to do. God, we just pray that as we take the ideas and conversations that we've had and we process them throughout this week, that you will show us the areas that will work well in our current situations and areas that we maybe need to process a bit more. Uh, Many of us have expressed how difficult it is to be that help desk and to just be still uh, in a place where families can find us. And I pray this week, God, as we prepare for Sunday, that you will just bring that to mind as we get ready. That you'll provide us space to just stand and be ready, conversations that we can have to help build some of those bridges into our parents' lives and our families' lives. And I just pray for each of our situations. We're all faced with different challenges that sometimes make doing what we want to do a little difficult. And I just pray, God, that in those moments, that you will remind us that you've called us to such a time as this, that this is our place and you've placed us here with purpose and reason. And I just pray, God, that even in the little things, the things that we feel are uneventful and maybe not important, God, that we'll be reminded that those too matter to our families and to the places where we serve. We pray that you'll bless our week in your name. Amen. Thanks so much, ladies. Have a good week.